You're going to hear me say that a lot, right? What's your child's learning style? How do your child like to learn? Because a lot of times our teachers teach our children based on what they think our child's learning style is. But listen, we have to do an assessment. So that's what we're here to talk about. And we're going to have a special guest on the line with us. And guys, I want y'all to pay attention, stay tuned. And if you're watching the replay, be sure to make sure you take notes and follow Advocacy Unlimited. All right. We're going to bring our guest in right now, and we're going to talk about the camp. Let's see, guys. I hope y'all can hear me really, really good. And hey, Miss Naomi, how you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm blessed. I'm doing great.
Good.
Good. So I was giving a brief intro for our viewers that are going to watch the replay.
Yes.
And I was talking about our children's learning style. And a lot of times, often, our teachers, they don't know how our children like to learn. And so they teach them based off of what they think our children like.
Right. Well, not just that, there's such a set standard, quote unquote, curriculum, right? That there's all these standards of how to teach and the methods that should be used. And that's what I'm gonna tell you. The reason I wanted to really talk to you about it is because I love the way that you're bringing educational, components into the trade world, right? So
Yes.
a lot of times those two things are separated, right? You either are educated or you learn a skill and a trade. So what I like is that you're bringing those components that we should be looking at in the classroom into your classroom when you're teaching these skills of barbering. So that's why I really wanted to kind of touch on it to get people to understand that, like you said, it is important to know your learning style, but in all areas, right? All areas.
Yes, absolutely. So when I found out about it, I immediately, so I have this rule, this 3-second rule, right? I waste no time when I hear good information, and I apply it immediately, because if I don't apply it immediately, my mind would tell me why it doesn't work and what I need to do to make it happen, right? So once I heard about your learning style, I just recently learned that. So I have now, I allowed all my students to take advantage of the assessment. It's an assessment online to check out the kids' learning styles. 20 questions, right? Simple questions. The kid has to be truthful and honest for me to really get the results and teach their child how to learn.
Right.
Yep.
And so someone, I'm sorry, but is it Yam Talking Jr.?
Yes.
Asked a question that said, do you work for mastery, right? And so from my perspective, right, when we talk about education, that's what I look at. As an advocate, when I go into a meeting and we're talking about children and learning and where they are, one of the issues that I find is that instead of deciding or seeing and focusing on whether or not the child has mastered a specific skill, right? So if we're talking about math, instead of looking at, okay, they showed their work, they got the right answer, and saying, okay, check off, you got 100, it'll be, you didn't follow the steps that we gave you. You didn't use the method that we taught you. So again, everybody's brain doesn't function the same. Everybody's learning style is not the same. So if you explain it your way, I might not get it. But if somebody else explains it in a different way, using different information, different objects, then my brain might be able to wrap around it differently. And so my method might be different. So I'll talk about one client in particular. The child actually takes the long route. So a lot of times in school, they'll say, oh, well, we teach them how to take the shortcut. This is how we do it. But if my brain, it only gains that understanding by taking a long route, I should be able to take the long route. And as long as you see that I've put in the work and I got the right answer. So that's what parents have to really fight for and focus on.
And so Mr. Yam Talking Jr., he's saying, I think he was asking the question, do you work for Mastery the school? Because he's a dean.
No.
He's a dean at Mastery. But no, you just broke down something that was so important though, and I like it. Thank you so much. And you're right. A lot of times our students are being taught by teachers who are either experiencing something called teacher burnout, or they're
Mm-hmm.
not, or they lost the drive and the passion for why they started teaching. And that's what Mr. Yam
Exactly.
talking is talking about. He's saying that he's dealing with students, he's dealing with teachers who that's his problem with the teachers, right? They don't take the time to learn the children. And it
Exactly.
is very hard. It is, I mean, it is not easy, but that's why you take on this job, right? Because it
Right.
is difficult. We don't take on jobs as easy.
Exactly. And so again, when you and I talk, I always have to focus on that one particular student, right?
Mm,
Someone who was in class and was struggling, and he's told that, he's not going the extra mile when it comes to his writing. He's not focusing. He's not determined. But when he came into your classroom, although he was quiet, you realized that he was learning. And then he took those skills and that knowledge and that information because he was interested in barbering already, right? So
yes.
now we have something that we're interested in. We have something that we like. We have something that we're able to focus on. He then took the knowledge and the information that he gained from being in your class into the school building, right?
Wow.
So someone that might have been able to only write a paragraph, if he's told to write about, history of, the 19th century, and they get a paragraph out of them. But if they say, write a 10-page paper on barbering, he would be able to do something like that, right? Because he's interested, he's going to do the research that drives him. He knows that this is something that he wants to make a career out of, and so he's more in tune and focused. So
Yes.
to your point, that's what we need more of, is pulling on and
Yes.
utilizing the things that children are already interested in when we're instructing them.
Absolutely. It's no point to really give a kid something that they will not be able to use. I mean, it's just like if you're thirsty and I'm going to give you, I'm going to put a brick in your hand. Like that can't work. You're like, what the heck is this? I'm thirsty. You have to give me water.
Exactly.
But what if I was thirsty and I didn't know how to tell you that I was thirsty? Because I
Right.
didn't know what that feeling was, right? I didn't know what this dry coughing feeling was in my throat. And so
Exactly.
it's up to us as parents as well as teachers
Yes.
and educators to find out what does the child need. So with the learning style assessment, first thing we do, take them to the 10 questions, right? It populates to me a result, and it gives me based off of how much percent do they like to learn audio, how much visual, how much tactile, and what's the dominant one. Then it gives me an assessment of that dominant learning style. So if the dominant one is tactile, that means that they need things in their hand. They need to be doing something. So when I'm teaching, I'm not talking to that child as much. I'm like, hey, let me use you as an example. You come to
There
the
you
front of the
go.
room, you hold the clippers, show the students exactly how to do this. If you're an audio learner, you're in the front of the class, we're talking to you, and we're giving you information. If you're a visual learner,
Exactly.
I'm coming to you and I'm going to show you how this looks, beginning and end. And I like
Exactly.
this one thing you said on your news feed and Instagram. You were talking about a teacher going into the class, dealing with the student, and the student having problems and issues, and the teacher not asking that question, that keen question, what is wrong?
Right.
And could you take me
Right.
through a little bit about that?
Right. Yeah. So it was, I think you're talking about the one where it was like the student, like during a test, the student had their head down the entire time.
Mm,
And the teacher said, when the student come and take the test at another time, the teacher said, I could have said no, but I believe in second chances. And it's one of those things that if
mm,
you have a student, especially if you have a student that is sitting back in the back of the classroom with their head down, they seem tired, they seem exhausted, they seem uninterested. A lot of times teachers tend to write them off as a problem. Oh, you're being lazy. You should have went to bed, but not thinking about the underlying issues, right? So for
ah,
all we know, that child's parent works overnight in a hospital, or even worse off, that that child's parent is in the street on drugs, right? And they're at home taking care of their siblings. And so in order to get themselves to school by 7:30 in the morning, right, they had to get up at 5 o'clock. They had to get their siblings ready for school. They had to dress them and then drop them off at school before they can get there. So if they come into your classroom that first period and they put their head down and sleep, do not automatically write them off as lazy and that they were being irresponsible by not going to bed. Pull them to the side and say, you know what? Yes, I'll give you that second opportunity to do the test, but what's going on? You know, are you not getting enough sleep? Are you eating breakfast? Are things rough at home? Because that family might need additional supports, right? How do we know when families need food, water, heat in their homes, any kind of supports? It usually comes from the school environment if somebody is paying attention. Somebody has to be paying attention to ask those questions and then get those families those resources.
Absolutely. So Naomi, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my story. Is that I was kicked out of 12 schools, right? I was probably deemed as the worst student in Philadelphia school district. I got sent to 12 different schools. I mean, that's extreme for 12 years of school. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
But they always told my mom I didn't have a problem learning. I had a problem with paying attention to what the teacher was saying, right? And so I remember vividly of what was happening, and I had teachers that did not care about me, and they didn't care about teaching, and I picked up on that vibe instantly. And you know when you're in a room when somebody don't like you. Even as an adult, you stand in a room, a person don't like you, and how do you supposed to respond to somebody? And you're picking up on that vibe, that feeling, intuition. And so as a kid, I'm picking up that this teacher burnt out. This teacher don't care about me. Okay, yeah, I got some problems. I'm not saying I don't, but take the time to get to know who I am. I always like to. I'm an extrovert, so I love to raise my hand. I love to try to get the answers right. Feed that, because you got so many introverted children that's in the class that don't want to be called on. They know answers too. Right? But you gotta work them together. I think that we work the extroverts and the introverts together. I did this one drill with the kids. I had them at the youth program, and I had them play basketball. So I had the kids. I said, listen, if you score a point, for the kids that have no point, you have to split your point with those kids. So I made the kids that were super, super dominant in basketball share their point with the kids who just couldn't get the ball.
Yes. And you know what I really like about what you just said, though, is that, so again, in order to come up with these strategies that you're providing, right, that means that you have to pay attention to who you're dealing with, and you have to recognize who's who, right? So if you have some children that are extroverts and you have those that are introverts, the way that our schools, our classrooms are typically set up, especially nowadays, is that they're grouped together anyway. And a lot of times you do a lot of group projects. So wouldn't it make sense to use that strategy that you just gave, right? So if you're setting up a certain table, you put half and half. You put the extroverts and the introverts together. So they're learning off of each other and they're gaining that information, and they're utilizing their own skills, but in a collaborative manner, right? Absolutely. And same thing with what you said, that's what they're doing. But in order for a teacher to use that strategy, they have to be willing to learn each individual child.
Take the time out. And I think they have those times allocated in all schools. It's just a matter of the teacher. Like I said, the teacher has to deal with a lot of students, multiple classes. I get it. It is very tiresome, but it is not a job for the faint. You have to be prepared and willing to do this, because you went through training, you learned how to do a curriculum, you learned Icebreaker, and you should be passionate about what you're doing. If not, you need to get out that position and you need to let somebody else in, because there's somebody else out there that wants to do that job.
Yes, and you know what? Another point that I brought up in one of my lives is that the fact of the matter is, as a teacher, If you build that rapport with your students, right? Like you said, you could tell when a teacher didn't like you, right? You felt
Mhm.
that energy. And what typically happens is when children feel that energy, they reciprocate it. So 9 times out of 10, that's why you got kicked out of the schools. Because if I'm coming in, first of all, after school too, you were already written off.
Yeah,
That's
I
all
did.
there
Yep.
is to it. It was done, it was a done deal. You already had
Mhm.
that stigma attached to you.
Yep.
That's it. And so when you went to each school and each classroom after that second time, you were already the problem child. So no teacher was going to like you past that point
No.
because the paper said, right? The
Yep.
documentation
It
said
followed me.
that you were going to give them a problem from
Yep.
day one.
That followed me.
However, if you had at least one teacher, right, that said, the paper says this, but I want to
Mm.
see what you say. I want to see
Mm.
what you're going to do. I
Yes.
want to see what you're going to prove, right? And if
Yes.
you felt that, you probably would have even gave a little pushback, like, no, no, y'all know me. But eventually, if that teacher gave you no choice, right? If
Yeah.
that teacher loved on you, showed you respect,
Mhm.
called on you, made you their helper,
Mhm.
then guess what would have happened? Eventually, you would have become that supportive child. You
Yes.
would have become the child that said to the other kids, like, come on now, settle down. Like, come on, don't give her no
Yep.
problems.
Yeah, don't
That
give her.
would have
I
been
did that. It happened
you
in a
become
few
that
years.
ally, right, for the
That's right.
teacher.
The
That's
ally.
part of classroom management. If
Yes.
you get the kids on your side, if you build that rapport, you won't have as many issues in the classroom.
You won't. I had this one school I just went to recently, right? The kids were in a supportive classroom, a supporting classroom. I came there to teach them about barbering. So I brought my whole setup. I'm cutting somebody's hair. And when I walked in, it was pandemonium. It was crazy. It was going down. I was like, yo, I don't know how this gonna act. What I did was I took 10 minutes and I just sat there and I paused and I watched. I didn't even speak to no kids. I didn't speak to no teachers, no staff. I watched the environment and I looked at who was that one kid that's dominating, right? It was a dominating kid there. So I walked up to him real quietly after he settled down. I was like, come here, man. I said, do me a favor. I said, take a seat. I'm about to show you something. And he was looking at me. He like, all right. He took a seat. I went and brought out my clippers. Now, I already know what to get these kids excited with, right? So I got a
Right,
whole set of clippers. I got gold guards, gold combs. I spent
right,
money.
right.
I spent money on my supplies. So I break out my clippers. He like, yo, what's them? I'm like, come here. I'm like, help me take them out the bag and pass them around. I
Yeah,
used the kid that was doing the most damage. He was
exactly.
doing the most. He was barking. He was yelling. He almost got kicked out before I got in there.
Right.
I had him helping. Miss Naomi, you got to see the pictures that the teachers got from me and him. This kid eyes was like this when I pulled the clippers out. He was like, what is these? He was holding them. I got a picture on my Instagram. He's holding
Right.
them, looking at them like, wow, like they real gold. And I'm like, no, they not real gold. But let me show you what you can buy with these clippers,
Right.
because these clippers saved my life. And
Exactly.
he was all in from there. I had no problem. So you gotta beat them
And
where
that's
they're at.
the thing. Yes.
You
And
gotta
that's
meet them.
not, it doesn't have to be, right? That's how you get their attention. Right.
Yes.
So you can teach them once you have their attention. But when you, like you say, you first had to get quiet. And a lot of times, well, you don't get that in the classrooms. If you walk into many school buildings, from the time you walk in the door, if you're walking down the hall, you can hear both kids and teachers screaming all the way down all the way down the hallway,
Yeah.
yelling, "Sit down,
Yeah.
shut up, sit down, be quiet, sit down, don't do this, no, don't stop, no, stop, don't." And the thing is that if your kids are at 50%, as a teacher, you should not be going to 100%. You should not, your tone, your value should not try to surpass your students.
Very true.
What you did is what should happen. You go down below them.
Yes.
Because when kids can't hear you, they stop and start to listen for you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So even if you started to whisper, if kids are loud and you start moving your mouth, they're gonna be like, "What? What? What's she saying? I can't hear her. Shh, wait, I can't hear her."
Yep.
They're gonna start to settle down and try to figure out what's going on, right?
And you got to be interesting. DJ Clipperhand said true. And you got to
Yeah.
be interesting as a teacher. I mean, you should have something about you that everybody loves, right? That one thing. And then you got to lead your classroom with that one thing they love. Like, what if you were a teacher that traveled into another part of the country, lived there for a certain period of time, right? Or what if you grew up with this diversity? Lead with your problem. Lead with whatever it is you struggle. Be transparent. I'm so transparent with my students, Miss Naomi. I tell them my struggle from the first day of class. I say, listen, I struggle with spelling. So if I misspell anything on this board, y'all have the right to correct me. And they love it. They start correcting me extra hard. Mr. P, you forgot an S. You forgot the N. It puts me on their level, Miss Naomi. When they see me on their level, they see me as a human.
Right. Well, not even just on their level, right? Because again, we are instructors, we are teachers, we are leaders for them, right? We're supposed to lead by example. But in order to do that, we do have to give of ourselves, right? You're opening up, you're letting them in. You can ask someone to let you in, but you're not willing to let them in. So that's the thing that you're doing, you don't even realize you're doing, right? You're just doing what feels right to you.
What feels right.
That's the key. That's the key, is that you're letting them in. So it's not even about, you can't pander to any one person, right? So when you go in, you have to go in with what you like, not even necessarily what they like, but it has to be what you like with glitter on it, right? So it's like, this is what I'm interested in, but let me make it big, let me make it bold, let me make it interesting and eye-catching for a child, and then you sneak in the learning piece of it. So that's exactly what you did. Glittery gold. And it's like, what's that? Lead me to it. And now it's like, now I'm open to learn. And there it was. You were able to take advantage of that opportunity.
Yes, and my students get a chance to learn. Sometimes we learn by teaching. And so I always tell this, if I'm mentoring anybody or guiding anybody through business or to just finding themselves through motivation and inspiration, right? I always tell them that the more you teach something, the more you start to learn. So I'm teaching them barbering and entrepreneur, things that I'm very passionate about, right? And I am learning because I have to teach them something that is of importance, of substance. So now I'm awakened. And I'm like, oh, man, this is good stuff. Let me put this on the board. Like, let me take a screenshot of this.
That is so funny because that's 100% true. So I know you followed me, and you know, like on Wednesdays, my counterpart, now Kelly, my partner, we do something called Wisdom Wednesdays. And whenever we have our conversations, we crack up because like on Mondays, we'll talk about what our topics will be. But when we do that and we're preparing for Wednesday, we have to do research, right? Because whenever you're teaching and providing information to other people, you want to make sure that you have all your stuff together. So it forces you to learn. It forces you to grow. And so, but even when you observe, like you said, you sat and you observed. When you observe other people's actions and reactions, that's all a learning experience for you. And then when you teach them and you see that something works, right? So that was you trying something, right? Let me see something. I'm going to pick one. This is what I'm going to do with him. And let me see what happens. Now you learn that that's a technique that you can use because it works. Now you might go to another school and try that same thing and it doesn't work. Does that mean that you stop doing it? It's no. It now says to you, all right, I need a second technique. Let me try something different.
And now your tool belt.
Again, so it's not a failure, right? Because now you learn that, okay, this isn't going to work for every class. This isn't going to work for every child. But now I'm tasking myself to try something new.
Absolutely. And I love our conversation. I'm so glad that you joined me on this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Good. I want to let everybody know we have an entrepreneur summer camp coming up July 27th. We got 5 spaces left. We're going to take the kids through so many different businesses to learn from multiple people like Miss Naomi, wonderful, thriving people. Miss Naomi has a business called Advocacy Unlimited. Can you tell us a little bit about Advocacy Unlimited?
Yes, Advocacy Unlimited. I started it because I used to do advocacy work with an organization, and I used to work within schools, right? I never worked for a school. I always went into the schools and I did a lot of case management and behavior management and things like that. And I saw such a disconnect when it came to our children, when it comes to what we've just been talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see the behaviors, we see the lacking when it comes to the education piece. But a lot of times parents don't know what their rights are. Parents don't know how to navigate the system. Parents don't know how to push for what their children need. And so I started this because now I go in with them. I go into the meetings. I go into the schools. When I see, I'm sure you all have seen the different Black Mainline Speaks in the Philadelphia schools where children are talking about these experiences. And when I see it, I hate that they went through these things, and instead of the parents fighting back, their intuition told them, let me take my child out of this situation that is harming them. For me, I'm about, let's go in and change this system. Let's go in and make sure that you don't have to run with your child. We're going to make sure that they conform and support your child the way that they're paid to support your child.
Wow.
And so I help parents navigate that system and make sure that all supports are in place and that your child isn't being punitively penalized. Our children are suspended and expelled at ridiculous rates. So like you said, 12 schools, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's so much support that should have been provided to you over those years, but instead you kept being written off as a behavior problem versus let's see what else we can do for him.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us, Miss Naomi. Look, guys, y'all got to make sure y'all check out Miss Naomi. Go into my stories. You can follow her, Advocacy Unlimited. If your child needs that support, you need somebody fighting and advocating for you and your child in the school district, like she just said, you make them conform to you. Make them conform to you and your child's needs because they work for you. Our teachers and our schools work for us, and we got to push for that. So thank you so much, Miss Naomi.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for joining us. BJ Clipper Hands, I appreciate you. I am the EST. Thank you so much. I would love for my son to participate in Baltimore and would like to get him a little bit more on the website provided. Please, yes, check out Miss Advocacy Unlimited. Check out JuniorBarberAcademy.com. And we can help virtually. So good. I'm glad she's in Baltimore. She can get the help she needs.
Yes. I have a client in Louisiana right now.
yeah, we got exactly. So because of modern day technology, we can help and assist any child anywhere, and we could do that. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you.
And I'll
talk
see you later.
Soon. Bye-bye.